Hello to all fans of Naruto Lemon. I will post all Naruto Lemon Yaoi, Yuri, or Naruko Lemon stories only on the Boosty channel because Uncle YouTube condemns this. Therefore, I invite everyone who wants Naruto Lemon content to my Boosty channel. Good luck.
お前はどこまで見えている。俺の死に様か。
O. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Uzumaki Uchiha Naruto. At the moment I am 25 years old. What else can I say? Well, if only that I am a Sannin and should soon become the 6th Hokage. Ask why 6th, and not 5th or 7th, for example? I'll leave this a secret for now, and as I talk, you'll learn about everything and be able to answer your questions yourself. And I want to tell you a story. The story of my life and how it all began. I won't distract you for long with unnecessary chatter and propose to begin my story. I was 3 when I met my first and best friend. At least I thought so at first and didn't meet other people who became my friends, but more on that later. This day was no different from others like it. The sun was still shining in the village of Konoha, a light breeze was blowing, saving the residents from the scorching rays. The birds sang only melodies known to them. Children played on playgrounds under the supervision of their parents. Those older children sat in class at the Shinobi Academy and listened to their teachers. Those who became genin trained under the supervision of their mentors and carried out light missions. Shinobi with the rank of Jounin and Chunin were taking a break from their assignments, some took them from the Hokage, and others had just returned from another mission. Civilians sat in their shops and stores, trying to sell something. Others were in their homes, waiting for their husbands from work, preparing a delicious dinner and cleaning the house so that it was clean and comfortable. Tell me that everything is peaceful and quiet and there is nothing interesting or surprising here? My answer to you, on the surface it seems to everyone that everything is peaceful and quiet, that this is an ordinary day, an ordinary village, which happens constantly and repeats again and again, that nothing is happening and you can be safe. But inside, not everything is as smooth and rosy as it might seem at the beginning. This day was different from all the previous ones that had passed before. And all because on this day, 3 years ago, our village was attacked by a 9-tailed fox demon, or as it is called Kyubi no Yoko. On this day, the 4th Hokage and his wife died, as well as many others, both shinobi and civilians. Many people lost their loved ones and relatives on this day, just as I lost my parents. But on this day I was born, and that day was my 3rd birthday. Ask why then I don't rejoice and celebrate? The answer is simple. This day is a day of mourning for the entire village, as well as for me. Therefore, I am not eager to celebrate it, and I have no one to celebrate it with. After all, I am an orphan. Until I was 3 years old, I was in an orphanage. But there they treated me like some kind of monster and monstrosity. Nobody wanted to play with me. They always beat and insulted me, despite the fact that I was just a little girl and could not do anything to them. But adults and other children did not think so, continuing to humiliate and insult. Nobody taught me to read and write. I taught myself everything. When I more or less learned all the basics, they simply kicked me out the door of the shelter, giving me a small room in an old dorm. When I asked why, everyone answered that a monster like me has no place among normal people. I felt sad and lonely. After all, I lacked comfort and warmth. But no one cared before that. When I got to my new home, under the hateful glances directed at me, I met the 3rd Hokage there, who was the only one who treated me well. He said that at first, until I was 6 years old, I would be looked after by a nanny who would clean and cook. To this I just nodded and offered to go into the house to drink tea. Several months passed after this. All this time I went outside with the nanny, but she didn't look after me at all and constantly closed her eyes when they threw stones at me, insulted me, and even beat me. I also tried to make friends with other children my age, but their parents always took them away as soon as they noticed me. Another month passed, and my birthday arrived, October 10th, and also a day of mourning. That day I went out for a walk for the first time alone. Without this irresponsible nanny. I walked along the streets of the village and looked at everything that came my way. There was a joyful, light smile on my face, and my eyes shone with happiness. I guess I was so focused that I didn't notice how I bumped into someone. Falling on my butt, I groaned, and tears of pain welled up in my eyes. After all, I was 3 years old. Then I looked up at the person I encountered and saw a man who was somehow different. He staggered and hiccuped all the time, and the smell was disgusting. He looked at me and wanted to apologize. I understood it from his eyes. But when he looked at me, his face was distorted with anger, and his eyes exuded rage. I got scared and began to crawl away, trying to get up at the same time. Meanwhile, the man called out to his friends. "Hey, guys! Look who I met!" He shouted. Our demon decided to go out for a walk. Haha, having said this, he began to laugh loudly, attracting attention. I was even more frightened, so I quickly got up from the ground and began to move away from them. His comrades and several other people who were standing nearby looked at me, and their faces showed hatred, anger, and rage. I didn't understand what this was connected with, but one thing was clear: I should run, which is exactly what I did. But the man who attracted everyone's attention shouted even louder. "The demon is running away. Let's catch him and take revenge on him for our loved ones." With this cry, he and the entire assembled crowd ran after me. I ran barely, trying to break away, but they stepped on my heels. Seeing the alley, I decided to run there to take a shortcut. But it was not there. The alley turned out to be a dead end, and the only entrance/exit was blocked by a crowd that had come running. "Well, the demon, did you get there? Now you will receive for all those who died." The same man shouted. He began to advance on me. I kept retreating and retreating until I ran into the wall. He grinned and raised his hand to strike, which immediately followed. I fell on my back, and a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of my mouth. Others, inspired, followed the example of that man and began to beat me. I don't know how much time passed, but after the second blow I lost consciousness from pain. I woke up in a place unfamiliar to me. It was a long tunnel with pipes dripping water, and on the floor it was up to my knees. I decided to walk through the tunnel, which resembled a sewer, and find the entrance. I don't know how long I walked like this, but suddenly I heard a loud growl. I hurried towards this sound and soon went out into a large hall, in the middle of which there was a cage gate, and on it was some kind of piece of paper with kanji. When I got closer, I didn't see anything, so I decided to call. "Ah. Is there anyone here? This is not a typo, since she is only 3 years old, she still doesn't speak some letters well?" I asked. Then blood-red eyes with a vertical pupil appeared in the darkness, and a huge claw stuck out from the bars, which apparently tried to kill me. I fell into the water and crawled away from the cage so that they wouldn't suddenly pierce me. Then I noticed how the darkness in the cage began to part, and a huge fox appeared before my eyes. Who are you?" I asked, and my voice trembled for a moment. "I am the great nine-tailed demon fox, Kyubi no Yoko, who attacked your village." The big fox growled, and only after his words did I notice the developing 9 tails, which seemed to live their own lives. "What are you talking about here? And who do we want?" I asked the questions that interested me at that time. I even forgot that I was beaten, and now I'm lying in that gateway and most likely bleeding. I'm sealed in you, girl. And we are in your subconscious. What a stupid jinchuriki I have, and what a little snot. The fox growled, but I didn't pay any attention to the last remark, interested in what the 9 tails had just said. I also caught a name that was unfamiliar to me, so I decided to ask at my own risk. "Sorry. Can you please tell me what Dinshwiki is? And why are you stuck in me?" I asked. The 9 tails fell silent, apparently contemplating whether to agree or not. Having come to a definite conclusion, he said, "Fine. I'll tell you, but in exchange you will remove this seal." He said and pointed to a piece of paper hanging in the middle of the cage. I looked at her and wondered how I could reach her. Deciding that Kyubi knew how, I agreed. Good, Kyubi-san. I smiled at the corners of my lips. The fox was apparently taken aback, since he did not immediately begin to speak. But quickly pulling himself together, he began the story. Jinchuriki are people who have bijou sealed within them. Bijou are tailed beasts. There are only 9 of them, from 1-tailed to 9-tailed. Their strength depends on the number of tails. So the 1-tailed one is the weakest of the bijou, and the 9-tailed one is the strongest. In other words, I am the strongest tailed one. He growled the last part with pride, and then continued. And I am sealed in you, because at that moment you were where I broke free, and you were the only one who came up to restrain my chakra. The 4th Hokage sealed me in you. He finished answering my questions. I sat in silence and digested the information received. Kyubi didn't stop me from thinking it over. He sat silently and waited for the moment when I fulfilled my part of the agreement. After a few minutes, I digested what I had heard and, rising to my feet, approached the cage. Kyubi-san, tell me, how can I take off my shoes? I asked, looking at the fox with interest. He bared his teeth, and at that very moment a red substance gathered around me, lifting me up, and stopped in front of the piece of paper. I stretched out my hand, touched it, and began to slowly tear it away, when they intercepted my hand, picked it up, and jumped away from the cage. 4th. Come here, and I'll tear you apart. Kyubi's roar was heard, and claws reached through the bars, trying to hit the man. I looked in surprise at the man who appeared and could not believe my eyes. The 4th Hokage himself stood in front of me. But a natural question arose. How did he appear here, and why is he here? I didn't know the answer to these questions, so I decided to ask. Shepvelti? What is the Shepvelti Hokage doing here? I asked in surprise. The man turned to face me and smiled. The 4th began to answer the questions posed, ignoring the Kyubi. I left part of my chakra so that at the right moment I could appear here and stop you, Naruto, he said, and I was surprised again, but this time because he knew my name, although he shouldn't have. How does Shepvelti know my name? I asked. He looked at me in surprise, which made me wary. How? Didn't the 3rd one tell you anything? He asked, to which I received a surprised look and a negative shake of my head. He sighed and smiled at me with a bright smile. I gave you this name, Naruto, he said. And then it dawned on me, causing my eyes to widen in shock. I mean, why you're mine, I couldn't finish, as trails of tears flowed from my eyes, and my voice began to tremble violently, but the man finished for me. Yes, I am your father, he smiled. Having heard the cherished word, I rushed into his arms and began to cry. Dad stroked my head and said something soothingly. I don't know how long we stood like that, but when I finally calmed down, I pulled away and smiled happily. Then the conversation went on. I told what happened to me over the 3 years of my life, and talked about an incident that happened recently, and why I ended up in the subconscious. At the last one, he shuddered and looked at me guiltily and asked for forgiveness. I asked, what are you apologizing for, and he told me what really happened on the day of the Kyubi's attack on Konoha. After listening to him very carefully, I said, I flatten you, Dad. You saved the television and me. I smiled, and Dad patted me on the head and smiled back. Then he began to disappear, which I noticed. I have to go, Naruto. Time is running out. But before I leave, I want to give you a small gift, he said, and began to fold the seals. A minute later a door appeared in the hall. Behind this door are books and scrolls that contain my knowledge and memory. When you want to start training, you just need to go into your subconscious and walk through that door. Having chosen the book or scroll you need, or both, you leave the subconscious, taking the selected item with you. After reading, you can, by an effort of will, send the book or scroll back to the library, he finished and, smiling, patted me on the head again. I believe in you, Naruto. And remember, your mother and I have always loved and will love you. With these words he disappeared completely along with my cry. Dad. I shouted, but he no longer heard. Tears flowed down my cheeks and I, unable to stay on my feet, fell into the water, shaking in sobs. So I sat there for about half an hour, maybe more, maybe less. But I calmed down completely, wiping my eyes and cheeks. I looked at the fox, who had become quiet for some reason, and said, "I don't hold it against you, Hyubi-san. You were controlled by an unknown person in a mask. So I flatten you," I said, and then I thought and asked, "Hyubi-san, how do you feel?" "I told you that Kyubi no Yoko," he said in a growling voice, but not so angry and furious. "I didn't mean the nickname, but the name. The chestnut creature has a name. What is yours?" I explained and asked. He was apparently very surprised, which I noticed from his enlarged eyes. He was silent for a minute, thinking about something, but then he said, "Kurama." "My name is Kurama," he answered, but there was no longer any anger, hatred or rage in his voice. "Kurama? Cool name," I said and smiled happily. "Go ahead and put it out?" I asked and smiled even wider, although much wider. He muttered something that I didn't hear, but said louder, "Fine. Now it's time for you," he said. I felt myself begin to disappear. The last thing I managed to say was, "I'm still coming to you, Kurama," and disappeared. I woke up in my small room. Apparently someone brought me home. I stood up and went to the mirror, wanting to see how badly I had been beaten. But what I saw shocked me. Firstly, I didn't have a single wound, bruise or abrasion, which was surprising. Secondly, I have become taller than my age and now I'll be about 6 years old. Thirdly, my hair has grown to just below my shoulder blades, whereas before it was just above my shoulders. Fourthly, and probably my most important change, is the presence of a red tail with a white tip at the back and red ears on my head. After standing in a stupor for several minutes, a piercing scream was heard throughout the village. A week has passed since that day when my cry echoed throughout the village. I adapted quite well to the tail and ears, as well as to the fact that I began to speak like adults, and not like 3-year-old children who had just learned to talk, which, by the way, also surprised me in my changes. I also got used to the fact that I began to look 6 years old, and not the 3 years I was supposed to. All this week I adjusted and didn't go outside, didn't even let anyone into my house. During this week, I was able to get to Kurama and demand from him an explanation of why I began to look like this. Well, he explained to me that it was his chakra that influenced me so much. Still, I got into the subconscious too early, and even tried to remove the seal, which was also reflected in the form of a foxtail and ears. After listening and weighing all the positive aspects, I took it for granted. After a short conversation, I asked Kurama to train me, to which he said that he would think about it and give his answer in a couple of days. These couple of days that the fox was thinking, I was reading a book that I took from my library. And so Kurama called into the subconscious. I immediately concentrated and found myself near the cage. Just as I wanted to ask if he agreed to train me, Kurama spoke first, thereby preventing me from starting. "Fine. I agree to teach you. But before we begin, I have 2 conditions. First, you must listen to me in everything and not whine if something doesn't work out for you or it's hard for you. The training will be. And second, when the time comes, you will find the seal from the cage and open it," said the fox. I was about to start being indignant about the second condition, because the first completely suits me, when the Ninetail stopped all my indignation with the following words. "I will not take over your body and destroy Konoha. You just remove the seal and put your own so that I can go out for a walk, pretending to be an ordinary fox. So what? Do you agree to these terms?" "Okay," I answered. "Where should we start our training?" I asked a question, and excitement and anticipation probably appeared in my eyes. The fox sighed heavily and began to think about his training plan. After a few minutes of silence, Kurama spoke. "For the first year and a half, you will meditate, read books and scrolls from the room your father left, as well as engage in physical training and increase your stamina. Don't even mention any chakra or techniques. In a year and a half, classes with chakra and the study of many shinobi disciplines will begin, such as Genjutsu, Ninjutsu, Kenjutsu, Ireninjutsu, Fuinjutsu, Taijutsu, and Senjutsu. This will continue for more than 1 year. Is the task clear? Kurama explained the training plan, and at the same time asked, to which I nodded and headed into the room for the books the fox said to read. Having taken what I needed, I disappeared from my subconscious and immediately began studying. So a year and a half passed. During this time, I managed to read almost half of my library. Although I am currently 4.5, I am physically well prepared, and my endurance has increased. Although it is still difficult for me to run a distance as long as the entire Konoha, I do not complain, and during the run I take breaks to rest and start with new strength. I unquestioningly fulfilled all of Kurama's demands, although I was tempted to be indignant, but still did not do it, restraining my impulse. And so, after a year and a half, Ku called me to his place and said that from that moment on, training with chakra and techniques would begin, which made me happy. Later he told me to sit and meditate to feel the chakra within me. It took me almost the whole day, and when I did it, I couldn't be happier with my success. Kurama gave me 2 days of rest and warned me that the training would be even more rigorous. When I imagined this, I immediately shuddered and began to feel sorry for myself and reproach myself for even mentioning that he would train me. Quickly pulling myself together, I went to the center of the village to buy myself something to eat and buy new clothes, otherwise the old ones were all worn out. In the village, everyone also looked at me sideways, like I was a monster, with hatred, anger, and rage. Some tried to attack me, but did not do so, because they remembered my fox attributes when I went out into the street for the first time after the changes. Speaking of them, I found a way to remove them, but it was temporary, so I only did it when I went outside. But I have a feeling that I will soon stop hiding them. Although maybe these are just unnecessary thoughts that visit me? Anything is possible. But I did not pay any attention to this feeling, completely surrendering to the rest allotted to me. I didn't do anything for 2 days. How's it going? If the concept of nothing includes cleaning the house, learning to cook, walking around the village and light exercise in the morning, then yes, I really didn't do anything for 2 days. Kurama was silent the whole time, apparently thinking about his further training plan, which makes me shiver just thinking about it. I feel like I'll regret ever getting involved with him. But, nevertheless, he is a good and knowledgeable friend. When I had free time from training, I sat next to him and listened to different stories. He told it interestingly that I never interrupted him, asking my questions at the end of the training. He often gave me practical advice, which I used. We also just sat and talked, often I fell asleep next to him under his warm and big side. So we can say with confidence that we are the best of friends, although I often want to beat him up or do something so that he will remember for centuries how to piss me off. 2 days later, I reappeared in front of the fox's cage. He looked at me somehow thoughtfully and appraisingly. I was waiting for what he would say and what task he would give me to perform during training. And after about 20 minutes, he finally deigned to start explaining. So it is. First, you will learn the shadow cloning technique. With its help, you will be able to learn faster, because all the experience gained by the clone will be transferred to you. You can find this technique in the library. Next will be chakra control, determination of elements, choice of weapons. Afterwards, direct training with the elements and techniques in other disciplines will begin. In addition, you will train hand-to-hand combat. Techniques, kenjutsu, and control will be studied by clones, divided into several groups. And you yourself will study taijutsu and continue physical training, since clones cannot convey physical strength and hand-to-hand combat skills. You will do all this for an indefinite amount of time, until you learn everything. This may take more than 1 year, even if you complete missions, go to the academy, or something like that. Is it clear? Kurama explained, causing my eyes to get bigger and bigger, and my complexion to change its hue with incredible speed and regularity. Without realizing anything, I nodded in agreement. Then go to the room, take the necessary literature, and start training. Oh yes, you will have one day off, and that is on Sunday. And if there are strong successes, then perhaps there will be more days off, this insolent, sadistic, fox face growled with satisfaction. No, I should feel sorry for the little girl. But he only makes things worse and comes up with workouts that would make an ordinary person sick. But I'm not ordinary. I'm a Jinchuriki, and I have to withstand such loads, regardless of age. Even if you are a 4-year-old girl. If I had the opportunity, I would have killed him. Nothing can be done. I myself signed up for this long term in the form of training. On weak legs, I wandered into the room with the library. I walked through the rows of shelves and found the book I needed. Taking it in my hands, I left my subconscious, finding myself in my room. I immediately began reading a book describing the technique. An hour later, I finished reading and started practicing. But as they say, the first pancake is always lumpy. So I didn't succeed on the first attempt, as well as on the second and third. So I tried for 2 hours until I was able to create 2 clones that were normal and capable, which undoubtedly made me happy. Then I left my apartment and headed to the most distant and abandoned training ground, where I have been training for the last year and a half. Arriving at the place I needed, I created clones, of which there were at least 100, which made me surprised and fell on my heel. I only created 2 a few minutes ago. Where did so many of them come from? I asked a question in my thoughts. What's strange is that I received an answer instantly. And even from Kurama. So. The thing is that I am an Uzumaki, and our clan initially had a lot of chakra, and taking into account the fact that I am the Jinchuriki of the strongest Bijou, my chakra is several times more than an ordinary Uzumaki. That's news. Now it's clear why I created so many clones. Come to think of it, can I create even more? Need to try. Having made the necessary seal, I directed the chakra, and after a second, numerous pops occurred. Looking at my work, I was surprised, but I was satisfied. Before my eyes, there were at least 1,500 copies of mine. Now I go into my subconscious, take the necessary literature, and distribute it to the clones. I decided to cheat a little and start my training at once. And chakra control and determining the elements and choosing weapons and studying techniques. So I divided the clones into several groups and gave instructions. I thought the same and decided to leave a group of clones that would lie down, rest and sleep. After all, if you think about it, this technique probably has a minus. Kurama agreed with me. And she was right. According to him, it turns out that the clone transmits accumulated fatigue along with experience. And this is fraught with bad consequences. I don't even want to think about it. So I did the right thing by leaving a few clones to rest. While I was pondering the correctness of my actions, the clones began to carry out tasks. Deciding not to be left behind, I began to warm up and then learn stances and hand-to-hand combat techniques. Several continuous workouts, and I'm already tired. Therefore, having decided that I needed to take a rest, I scattered the clones, and, swaying slightly from the fatigue that had fallen on me, I also scattered those who were sleeping and resting in every possible way. Quickly perking up, I went to the bag that had been left near a distant tree and took out my lunch. Or is it already dinner? Oh, it doesn't matter. Having eaten a hearty meal, I sat in the lotus position and began to analyze the information that I received from the clones. And there was quite a lot of it. Well, I was able to climb halfway up the tree, which is already good. I have 3 elements. Although, if you think about it, at my age, there shouldn't be 3 elements at once. Strange. Well, okay, since there are 3 elements, it means I have very good potential. So, I have wind, lightning, and fire. Judging by what I read in the book on the elements, it turns out that my fire is stronger than the wind, and the wind is stronger than lightning, but at the same time the wind complements and enhances the fire well. It turns out that I don't have, for the most part, compatible elements except for fire and wind. Nothing complements or enhances lightning, except perhaps the element of water, but I don't have that. Okay, I'll work with what I have. And so there are 3 elements, I need to rejoice. I digress. Go ahead. I learned how to simply seal it in a scroll and unseal it, and also learned how to write hieroglyphs well, because Fuin requires skill in calligraphy. Of course, I'm still far from being a master, but that's not bad either. There are no results in other shinobi disciplines yet, except that I chose a weapon, and this is a battle fan and a katana made of chakra-conducting steel. Fortunately, in my subconscious I accidentally stumbled upon one room. When I went there, I saw a variety of weapons. Apparently Dad tried. I also decided to learn his Flying Thunder God technique, so my father's special kunai, which he used for his famous technique, also became my weapon. I also read this in the book. Okay. I'm done with rest, now I need to start training. Having created the same number of clones and given the same instructions, I began to study. The training was actually exhausting and difficult. But I don't need to complain, because I signed up for this myself, understanding the whole rationale behind such training. I feel that I would sooner die from such training than become stronger. My training continued. I almost never went home, spending all my time at the training ground. She took food with her, and when she took a little rest, she took a bento and, having refreshed herself, began training again. And so on day after day. It was hard, but over time I began to get used to it, although kurama increased the load. But I didn't complain or whine about fate, doing everything that was required of me. Another 1.5 years has passed since I started new training. I've learned quite a lot and, according to kurama, now I'm stronger than a genin and almost on the same level as a chunin, which is not bad. Now I'm 6, although I look like 9. Oh yes. I forgot to say that when I met kurama at the age of 3, I saw his past in a dream. It lasted 2 years and ended on my 5th birthday. After what I saw in my dreams, my thoughts became adults, and kurama, also the Hokage, who continues to visit me from time to time, says that I matured very early. My look is like that of an adult, tired of life, who has seen a lot. A child should not have such a look. But given what I saw, this is not surprising. But only the Hokage and kurama notice such a look. Even old man Tuchi from Ichiraka Ramen, which I frequent, didn't notice. Although you can easily pay attention to my mature and intelligent reasoning. In all other respects, I remain a child, except for my body, which looks older than me. But that's not about that now. I decided to join the ANBU in order to complete tasks and get money for them, and then save it in order to later buy a normal house, and not this dilapidated house in which I now live. At the moment I am in the Hokage residence and knocking on the door. Hearing come in, I opened the door and walked into the office. The Hokage was sitting at the table and sorting out some papers. Looking up from what he was doing, he looked at me and was a little surprised, you can see it in his eyes. Naruto? What brings you to me? Asked the Hokage, to which I came closer to the table and said in a serious and decisive voice. Hokage-sama, will you allow me to join the ANBU squad? I asked, waiting for his answer. He choked on the pipe he had just lit and began to cough. I waited patiently for him to pull himself together and start asking his questions. And I was 100% sure that he would ask them. Why did you decide to join ANBU? You know they don't take children there, right? You haven't even gone to the academy yet, and you're already ready to join the ANBU, he said. I just looked at the third with a serious look and began to answer. Hokage-sama, I have trained hard for 3 years, and now my level is a strong chunin. I want to start doing missions, but I don't want to be a genin because it's a waste of time. And in ANBU, I will be able not only to go on missions and earn money, but also to train, which is undoubtedly a plus. And I know that they don't take children there, but an exception can be made for geniuses, right? I asked the Hokage slyly. He sighed heavily and began to think about his further decision. I waited patiently, without interrupting him from his thoughts. And after a few minutes, which dragged on for a very long time, the Hokage decided to voice his decision. Fine. But you will be there, so to speak, on a probationary and, for now, unofficial period. You will undergo special training that will last 3 months, and after that you will perform tasks under supervision. If you do well, and your partners approve you for the position of ANBU, then you will officially join there, and the probationary period will end. Is that okay with you? If not, then you can wait a few years. When you're old enough, then you'll try to join the ANBU, the old man said. I didn't think long and immediately gave my answer. Everything suits me, Hokage-sama, I said. The third sighed heavily and closed his eyes. Mouse. He called, and at that very second a tall guy appeared in front of the Hokage, or was it a man? Doesn't matter. The guy was wearing a mouse mask and special ANBU clothing. You called, Hokage-sama? Yes. Take this girl to the ANBU headquarters, give her a mask and clothes, and give her instructions. She will undergo training for 3 months. Afterwards, she will carry out the task with partners who will keep an eye on her. Who it will be, you decide for yourself. Is the task clear? The Hokage asked the mouse. Yes, Hokage-sama. Can I go? The ANBU officer answered and asked. You can, the third gave permission. The mouse rose from his knee and headed towards the exit from the office. I followed him. We walked in silence. He didn't say anything, and I didn't ask. It wasn't about anything. I understood that everything would be explained and told to me later, when we arrived at the headquarters and I received my uniform and a special tattoo. And then, after about half an hour, we found ourselves in front of an iron door. Having opened it, the mouse walked into the room and led me along long corridors. Another 10 minutes later, we found ourselves in front of an ordinary door. Going inside, the mouse approached a man and said something. He looked at me in surprise and, shrugging his shoulders, turned to me. And what is the name of our new comrade? He asked me. Naruto Uzumaki, I said calmly and looked into the man's eyes. He peered at them and after a couple of minutes of staring, somehow chuckled approvingly. Follow me, Naruto. Now we'll pick out your clothes, weapons, and you'll choose your mask, he said. To which I nodded and said. Fine. But I don't need to choose a weapon, I already have it, I said, and, opening the scroll, showed them my father's katana, fan, and 3-blade kunai. They looked at the weapon and were surprised, but said nothing. The man, silently, went to the warehouse, and I, having sealed the weapon back, hurried after him. Entering the warehouse, the man began to pick out my uniform. It took no more than 10 minutes. Then he took me to the masks, telling me to choose carefully. Without thinking, and without really looking at them, I walked strictly straight. It was as if something was leading me, from which I could not escape this feeling and sensation. 5 minutes later, I approached the farthest wall, where a mask hung alone. It depicted a grinning fox, and the mask itself was transparent. I reached for it and carefully took it and put it on my face. I immediately felt as if it was glued to me, and I had the feeling that it would not be possible to remove it. After the mask was put on, my tail and ears spontaneously appeared. Taking it off, I looked at the very surprised ANBU. Having come to his senses, the man asked. Are you sure you want to take this mask? He asked, in a slightly nervous voice, which he tried to hide, but it didn't work out. Yes. Is there something wrong with this mask? I asked. Well. All the owners before you died under strange circumstances without serving even a year. So this mask is cursed, and none of the new arrivals ever takes it, he explained. To which I smiled mysteriously, wagged my newly appeared tail and twitched my ears. At these actions, the ANBU somehow twitched and stared at my fox attributes. Nothing. This won't happen to me, I said and put the mask back on. From now on, I am a phantom fox. After these words, I wagged my tail even more diligently. After I uttered my new nickname, those in the room froze like idols. No, so what? Just think, a girl with ears and a tail. Well, just think, I took the mask, so to speak. Nothing happened, nothing exploded, no one died or was injured. So everything is fine, everything is in order. Why freeze in one place and look at one point without blinking? I don't understand them, and apparently I never will. Will the same fate await me? Brrr, just imagining it, it instantly makes me shiver. No, spare me from such happiness. We have to somehow remain ourselves while this preparation is going on. Otherwise, they will have to make me like themselves. Looking at the frozen ANBU officer and the man unknown to me, by the way, he never introduced himself, boo, how rude, I decided to get them out of this state, otherwise we'll be stuck here until the evening, if not until tomorrow. Hey! How are you there, okay? I asked, taking off my mask and waving my hand in front of their faces. They shuddered and, turning their gaze to me, giggled nervously, and the phrase they uttered caused me to have a nervous tic. Haha, so it wasn't imaginary? Does the girl have ears and a tail? Haha, glitches, these are all nervous glitches. We urgently need to go to the hospital and see a psychiatrist. What is this happening now? Did they call me a glitch? Hey! I'm not a glitch, but a real one. There's no need for me to come up with any nonsense here. And don't touch the tail and ears, they are real. And generally speaking, are you going to give me a tattoo? And you, Mouse-san, should introduce me to the teachers and show me the base with the training ground. I'm not going to hang around in this room for God knows how long. I let out an angry tirade. They immediately stopped laughing and stared at me. Having rubbed their eyes, they apparently remembered why they were here. Eh? Why yes, exactly. Let's follow me, I'll give you a special tattoo, and then the mouse will show you everything and explain everything, the man said and headed into another room, which I had not noticed before. Having followed him, I decided to ask his name anyway, otherwise he, apparently, would never remember that he needed to introduce himself. Sorry. What is your name? The man stopped, turned around and looked at me. Sorry, what? He asked, with surprised eyes. My eye twitched nervously at this statement, and I realized that I would have a very hard time. I asked, what is your name? You didn't introduce yourself when I first came in. And this, you know, is not polite of you, I said, crossing my arms over my chest and wagging my tail in dissatisfaction. Oh, sorry, I forgot. My name is Oriku Naro. And you, young fox? Oriku asked with a friendly smile. And only now I realized that I didn't introduce myself, but I taught others. What a fool. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. It's nice to meet you too, Naru-san, I said and also smiled. He ruffled my hair, which made me frown and wag my tail again. And I seem to have developed a habit of wagging my tail. Hi, that's funny. Perhaps with the wagging, my ears also change their position? It would be interesting to know this. Well, oh well, otherwise I'll miss everything. Look, while I was thinking, they had already finished giving me a tattoo and were taking me to Mouse. Approaching the ANBU, Orek and Mouse said goodbye, and Naru even told me to come see him more often, to which I promised to visit him from time to time. Then Mouse led me into the rooms of the base, simultaneously showing me where and what was located. I understood that he was leading me into the rooms in order to introduce me to my future comrades. Oh, I feel like they will be biased towards me and consider me weak and a burden. And if among my future comrades there are those who hate me, and if they recognize me, it will be very bad. Although I hope everything will work out. And so, we already approached the room and the mouse, having named the password, opened the door and walked into the room. I hurried after him. When I walked in and the door closed, all the eyes of the ANBU there turned to me. I swallowed the stuck lump and, looking at the accompanying person, who in theory should introduce me, sighed heavily, turned my head to the ANBU, and said, "Oh. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and from this day on I am an ANBU." Hokage-sama told me to undergo training and then begin my duties under supervision. If my teammates approve of me, then I will officially join the ANBU. The deadline was given for 6 months. She immediately blurted out everything she needed and lowered her gaze to the floor. My ears lay flat against my head and my tail wagged sadly. The phantom fox mask was on the head, without hiding the ears. There was a ringing silence in the room, and therefore I was afraid to look up at the people in the room. Are they real? Someone's voice sounded in the deathly silence, making the question quite loudly audible. I raised my eyes in confusion and looked at the speaker. Eh? I'm sorry, what? I asked the ANBU who asked me the question. Are the ears and tail real? He reformulated the question to make it clear. The others looked at me expectantly, waiting for an answer. Why yes, real ones, I answered confusedly. How old are you, Naruto? Asked another question, but this time another ANBU, in a boar mask. SH6, also confused. Everyone looked at me as if they had seen the eighth wonder of the world. Although, if you look at me, there is something to be surprised about. I actually don't look 6, you'd give me about 9 years old, no more, no less. Red hair that reaches just below my back is tied in a high ponytail, with the front, short strands framing my face. 6 stripes, 3 on each cheek, different eye colors, one blue, the other violet blue. The clothing consists of a white and black jacket and white and black shorts. Bandages are tied on the right leg, and a pouch with a weapon is attached to them. On his feet are standard shinobi sandals, only white and black. Fingerless gloves on hands. Dad's katana, fan and kunai are in the scroll. And he, in turn, is in a pouch, which is attached to the back. A little later I will take them out and attach them to their places. So I understand their surprise. And you look much older, I'm surprised. Let me ask. What is this connected with? Asked the same ANBU in a boar mask who asked about age. Well, as far as I understand, these are the consequences of early use of chakra. I read that in my clan they start training at the age of 3, preparing them to work with chakra. This is necessary so that we are not older than we are. After all, our chakra is specific and there is a lot of it, which is very difficult to contain, so the excess is used to rebuild the body. And since I didn't undergo special training to strengthen my body, but immediately used the chakra, this is the result, I answered, telling the story I had prepared earlier. Where did the fox ears and tail come from then? The same boar asked the question. I do not know this. It's just that one morning, when I woke up, I discovered the presence of a tail and ears, I answered without going into details. There was silence. Apparently they are considering the information they received. But 5 minutes later, another ANBU in a cat mask broke the silence. It's clear. Then welcome, Uzumaki Naruto. I hope we work together. Said, judging by the voice, the girl. I think the masks can be removed. In this room and throughout the base, as well as during training, you do not need to wear a mask. But don't forget to wear it when Hokage-sama calls you. My name is Yukiri, nice to meet you. Me too, Yukiri-san. I answered, to which she smiled. Then others began to introduce themselves, but I didn't remember everyone. But I think that I will meet with them very rarely, if at all. But something tells me that I will often see exactly those whom I remember. I wonder why I have such premonitions. This has never happened before. It's all strange, don't you think? Anyway. I'll probably name those I remember. The boar's name is Tenzo or Yamato as he asked to be called, the mouse's name is Genma, the dog-masked ANBU's name is Kakashi, the hawk-masked ANBU's name is Shisui, and the raven-masked ANBU's name is Itachi. The last two, by the way, are from the Uchiha clan, and both are quite cute, but for me Shisui-san is better. They are 5 years older than me, although judging by my appearance, they are 2 years older. In any case, this is not as important as the fact that they will finally take me to the training ground and tell me who will be in charge of my training. After all, the preparation, according to my calculations, taking into account the fact that the time was given 6 months, will take only 3 months, and the remaining 3 I will carry out missions with partners or a partner. Although it could also be Yukiri-san, which would be a plus. I think that we can find a common language and become friends. Oh. Somehow I got lost in my thoughts again and didn't notice how we arrived at the training ground. So did they ask me anything else? Here's the problem. I have to finish immersed in thoughts, otherwise it won't last long, and I'll die if I think like that on missions. Sorry, I was lost in thought. Would you please repeat that? I asked, hanging my head down, shuffling my toes on the ground, lowering my ears to my head and wagging my tail guiltily. Genma-san sighed heavily, apparently because I wasn't listening to him. But it's not my fault. Fine. I asked what level of training you have and what do you currently know? He repeated his question. I raised my head and looked at the guy. Blinking my eyes, I answered everything as it is, without concealment. But I still decided to keep silent about some events. Strangers shouldn't know this. Okay, Genma-san. My level is now at the level of a strong chunin. I am good with a katana and a battle fan. I know all shinobi disciplines at a fairly good level. Almost a few ninjutsu master, I master 3 elements, wind, fire, and lightning. Also taijutsu and iron ninjutsu, at a high level. But there are problems with jinjutsu. I can recognize and remove illusions, but I cannot cast them myself, since I am not predisposed to illusions. I know quite a lot of techniques, listing them would take a lot of time. That seems to be all, I said, keeping silent about my father's techniques, senjutsu and foxing. I think that I will tell about kurama and senjutsu only to those closest to me, and the rest will find out when the time comes, but I most likely won't be able to hide about my father's techniques. I will still use them on missions, but it's better not to talk about it for now. Very good. Your level is amazing, for a 6-year-old girl. I think the preparation will not take much time. We'll teach you how to work in a team, teach you some ANBU techniques, and also how to hide chakra. We will also teach you techniques and control. This will just take about 3 months, and after that I will assign you partners to carry out missions, and to look after you, Genma said. He will be quite surprised to learn that it will take much less time to master everything he said. Genma-san. I believe that it will take much less time. With these words I created about 1,000 clones that filled half the training ground. Genma was very surprised by so many clones. You're capable, he praised me, and I smiled shyly. I think it'll be fun, hee. After giving instructions to the clones, I sat down near a tree to sit in the shade. But, apparently, it was not my destiny to sit quietly, because I heard Yukiri-san's call. She quickly ran up to me, and when she ran up, she began to say something. But I didn't understand a word of what was said. Hey, Yukiri-san, can you speak more slowly and clearly? I don't understand you, I asked, calming the chattering girl. Naruto-chan. You don't mind if I call you that, do you? She asked me, to which I shook my head as a sign that I didn't mind. Naruto-chan. Come with me to the store. Otherwise, one is bored, and the other girls are on missions and won't be back soon. Well, will you come with me? What about training? I just started it, I asked, pointing to the training clones. She turned her head to the side I indicated and saw a huge number of my copies. About. So, are you proficient in the shadow cloning technique? And there's so much to create. Yes, you are a genius, like Ida-kun and Shirkun. Yukiri exclaimed, clapping her hands. Stop. Ida-kun? Shirkun? Who is she talking about? Who were you talking about just now? I decided to ask this energetic girl, which is not typical for ANBU. Eh? About whom? She asked again, apparently did not understand what I asked. And not surprisingly, she was so lost in her joy that she forgot what she was talking about a minute ago. This reminds me a little when I get lost in my thoughts and reasoning. Well, here we go again. She's already looking at me worriedly. Well, you mentioned Itakuan and Shirkuan a minute ago. So I asked who it was. I calmly shrugged, explaining to her my question. Ah. Understood. I'm talking about Itachi and Shisui. They, like you, entered ANBU at an early age, though not like you, but the fact remains a fact. Itachi is the genius of the Uchiha clan, and Shisui is not far from him. So I wouldn't be surprised if they become your partners, and they'll also give Kakashi a hard time. As I heard, he is also a genius, Yukiri explained to me with a playful sparkle in her eyes. So what? Will you go shopping with me? I started, but I was interrupted. Your training has nowhere to go. Leave your clones, they'll finish the training and unwind on their own, she said, frowning. But, I tried to say again, but again they didn't let me finish. This time, they grabbed my hand and pulled me towards them. I don't want to hear any buts. The cat said sharply, leading me along. And yes, address me as you, and without any san. I feel like some kind of old woman, she smiled, looking at me over her shoulder. All I could do was nod, agreeing with Yukiri. We spent 6 hours shopping, maybe even 8. I didn't keep track of the time. Yukiri got me so busy that it slipped my mind that there were my clones at the ANBU training ground. I remembered them when I received information, followed by cheerfulness from all the dispersed clones. While Yukiri was happily chatting about something, I was putting everything into order. I also remember what I said to one of the clones. Tomorrow, there will be teamwork training. Although most ANBU members work alone, there are also those who work in a team, and this requires teamwork, and without it there is no way. Otherwise, the task will be death for you. Life is like that. Especially the life of a shinobi. Every mistake, every task, and even training. All this may be the last thing in your life. After all, the life of a shinobi is short and few live to old age. Hey! Naruto-chan. Are you even listening to me, huh? Oh, it looks like I got lost in my thoughts again. You definitely need to stop with this. Sorry, I was lost in thought, I said guiltily and looked to the side. I wish I hadn't done this. People looked at me in whose eyes one could read fear, horror, disgust, hatred, anger, rage, and contempt. And why do they have so much emotion in their eyes? Usually you can only see hatred and anger there. And here it is. Did something happen, Naruto-chan? Yukiri asked me. Apparently she noticed my confusion. I looked around and noticed that all eyes were directed towards me, and they themselves were trying to move away as far as possible. Why are they? Usually they don't behave this way when I appear on the streets, limiting themselves to throwing glances, blazing hatred and insults addressed to me, and occasionally throwing stones. And here it is, I said, and in my voice you can feel the resentment and confusion. I'm offended because I'm still a child, albeit with an adult body and adult thoughts and reasoning. And I want to be treated like all children. But I understand that this will never happen unless we seek their recognition. But why do this on purpose? In time they will recognize me, and everything will be fine, right? And confusion, because I didn't expect such emotions in their gaze and actions. Most likely they were afraid of your ears and tail. Still, it's not every day you see a fox girl, Yukiri answered, thereby breaking me out of my thoughts. Looking at the wagging tail and touching the ears on my head, I smacked myself on the forehead. How could you forget to put them away when you went outside? Who will answer this question for me? I'm such a fool. I forgot to remove them. It's all your fault, Yukiri. By the way, you dragged me shopping, so I forgot. I said, quietly swearing with all possible and impossible words at my forgetfulness, and at the same time scolding Yukiri. Don't pay attention to them. And don't you dare put away your beautiful ears and tail. They suit you very well. And in general. You took the call sign Ghost Fox, right? She asked, to which she received my nod and continued. Wow, the ears and tail will add realism to you. Although here it is not the phantom fox, but the bloody fox that would be better suited. I mean, your hair is so red, she said, quickly getting out of her way when she noticed my dissatisfied look in the words bloody. No. Phantom would be better. Then you'll find out why, I said evasively. Still, I have certain plans for this call sign. Well, as you know, she shrugged. Shall we continue shopping? She asked, changing the topic. I answered briefly, something like, and followed Yukiri. By the way, I never described it. Based on her looks, you can't give her more than 20, although that's probably true. Hair reaches to the waist, straight, chestnut color. The figure is beautiful, slender, size 3 balls. The uniform fit her perfectly. Her eyes are the color of grass green, the pupil resembles a cat's eye, which makes her look like a cat herself. I wonder if I will grow up to be as beautiful as she is. The rest of the time flew by like that. It became completely dark outside. After saying goodbye to Yukiri, I headed to my home. I had a whole bunch of different packages in my hands. Yukiri bought me a whole heap of clothes, but did not pay any attention to my protests and refusals. I also bought a lot of food, apparently enough for 3 months. When asked why I needed so much, she just shrugged and cheerfully changed the topic. Finally, I reached my home. After throwing my bags into the hallway, I headed to the bathroom. After quickly rinsing off, washing and changing clothes, I picked up the bags of food and went to the kitchen. Having laid out the food and quickly cooked myself a small dinner, and then, after washing the dishes, I took the remaining things and headed to the room. After unpacking the bags and putting them in the closet, I combed my wet hair and straightened the bed. As soon as my head touched the pillow, I immediately passed out, going to the kingdom of Morpheus. The last thought was to turn to Kurama with a request. Kurama, wake me up at 7 tomorrow morning, okay? I asked, but I never heard an answer, falling asleep. Where can I go, Onion Mountain? Come on, get up. You have training soon. One flea screamed in my head, causing it to split open. Cursing to myself, I got up from the floor, where I had previously fallen due to a sharp and unexpected scream and growl, and trudged into the bathroom. Couldn't you have woken me up properly? I asked my friend. He muttered something, but I only understood one thing, that I, an ungrateful little thing, asked to wake him up, and I was also complaining, and that next time he wouldn't wake me up. No, that's an impudent red face. And the fact that he's a parasite and lives with me, and I don't say anything, doesn't bother him? And I don't care that he lives as a prisoner and not in my apartment, but in me, and even behind a cage. I don't express this to him and I don't complain about it. He's still not happy. He has no shame or conscience. But what am I talking about? Demons have no conscience at all, let alone shame. Okay, otherwise my head will hurt and I won't be able to concentrate properly on the upcoming workout. Walking into the bathroom, I washed myself, freshened up, and dressed in my standard ANBU uniform. Going into the kitchen, I prepared myself a light breakfast, and after I had a snack, I took the mask and ran out of the apartment, not forgetting to close the door behind me. There is still time, but not as much as we would like. So I ran across the rooftops, to the ANBU training ground. I arrived just in time. Genma-san and 2 other people I didn't know were already at the training ground. One was a guy of about 20 with black disheveled hair and blue eyes, and the second was a girl, also about 20, with medium-length hair that was purple and brown eyes, an excellent figure, almost the same as Yukiri. Coming closer, I greeted Genma-san and turned my gaze to 2 people I didn't know. This is Alex and Rema. They were on a mission, so you don't know them, Genma explained to me. These 2 will train you in teamwork as well as espionage skills. The training schedule will be as follows, he began, but I interrupted him, saying the following. No need for a schedule. You tell me what time to come. I will leave training in techniques and everything else to the clones, and I myself will learn espionage and teamwork, I suggested, wagging my tail. Genma sighed heavily, apparently considering my proposal. Fine. That's what we'll do, he agreed with my words. Naruto, you can create clones. I'll lead them, and you go with Alex and Rema to another training ground, Genma said. I nodded and created many clones. Some of them immediately went to rest and sleep, and the rest turned to Genma. Let's go, Alex said briefly, heading in the opposite direction. I hurried after them, trying to keep up, not one step behind them, which I did quite successfully. Half an hour later we arrived at another training ground. I immediately began to look around, but did not find anything interesting. Everything is the same as at other training grounds, except that there is much more vegetation and trees. Turning my face to the mentors, I began to wait for them to begin their explanations. Rema started first. She talked about the meaning of espionage and why it was needed. She also talked about types of espionage. As the story progressed, I began to feel uneasy. And upon completion, I clearly understood that I didn't want to be a spy, especially if the task required me to lie under someone else. I don't like this at all, which is why my face contorted and my tail began to twitch nervously, which did not escape the eyes of my mentors. Is something wrong, Naruto? Alex asked, looking at me. I hastened to pull myself together and smile slightly. It's okay, I said, trying to make my voice sound casual. But I don't like spying. And I wouldn't like to work as a spy, I said. Rem somehow nodded understandingly, remaining as cold as ever, but in her eyes and actions, and in her words, there was a hint of contempt for me, although I didn't even understand what it was connected with. I beg your pardon, Rem-san. Could you tell me what I did wrong? I decided to ask while I had the opportunity. What are you talking about? She answered the question with a question. I wagged my tail displeasedly, and my ears stood up straight. You look at me with contempt, and this contempt is evident in your words. So I ask, what did I do wrong? I asked the question again, explaining beforehand. She somehow grimaced, but nevertheless, decided to answer. I don't recognize such a little thing. Whether you are at least 3 times strong, a genius, or something else. But children have no place among ANBU, especially someone like you. Teach, I'll teach, since this is an order from Genma and Hokage-sama, but don't even hope for friendship. She spat out these words, to which I snorted when I heard her. In principle, I had no intention of making friends with her, since I didn't really like her. But I was counting on camaraderie and support. After all, she is more experienced and older than me. But apparently not fate. Maybe someday she will recognize me and we will start communicating normally? Okay. Let's continue, Alex said, thereby defusing the situation. But he is still a pretty good person. Maybe we'll even become good friends. Okay, we must not get distracted. This time Alex started talking about teamwork. As the story progressed, I realized all the delights of teamwork and decided to learn how to work in a team so as not to let my comrades down in the future. I voiced these thoughts when Alex finished explaining. He praised me and also promised to teach me this, as well as a couple of techniques and to learn how to use a katana. I smiled happily and thanked Alex-san. He smiled back at me and asked me to call him simply by his name, without adding anything. Rem grimaced at this, but remained silent. Then we started practice. At first, nothing worked out for me, and I often made serious mistakes. Rem screamed at me and said that I was a brainless chicken and not at all understanding, although she explains and shows everything simply and clearly. But for her, everything is simple, accessible, and understandable. But for me, it is confusing and difficult. I'm not saying that I can't, and I'm certainly not saying that it's difficult for me. I say that she explains poorly, which is why I don't understand and make mistakes all the time. From here we constantly snap at each other, and Kurama only adds fuel to the fire, saying various funny words to Rem in my head, which almost makes me laugh, thereby angering her even more. With Alex, on the contrary, everything is fine. Even though I make gross mistakes, he doesn't yell at me, and everything is accessible, understandable, simple, and clearly explains. He helps and gives advice, which makes me feel better and better. When I was noticeably tired, we stopped and talked casually about various topics. Rem did not give me rest, and there was no talk of talking. Several times my clones, both training and resting, dispersed, and then one of the clones created a new portion. All this started to give me a severe headache, and it hasn't gone away since this morning. And then new information comes in, some from Alex and Rem, some from Gunma and the clones. At one point, I swayed and began to fall. I was prevented from hitting the ground by the strong arms that supported me. This someone turned out to be Alex, who noticed my pale appearance in time and how I began to sway, ready to fall. "Are you all right?" "You're all pale," he asked, and then touched my forehead. "Yes, you're all on fire. You have a fever," he said, and only after his words did I realize how hot I was and how thirsty I was. The head is weak and not liftable, and the breathing has become faster. Alex picked me up in his hand and said, turning to Rem, "Rem, go to Gunma and tell him that Naruto has a fever and that I took her to the hospital. Tell the clones to scatter. There is no need to waste her strength in vain." After these words I no longer heard anything, plunging into the saving darkness. I woke up in a white room. Judging by the smell of medicines and herbs, this is a hospital. My head is empty and my throat is dry. I try to get up, but I fail. My head is pounding, I'm dizzy, everything is swimming before my eyes, and my hearing is failing me, because I didn't hear that someone entered my room and sat down on a chair next to the bed. There was silence in the room, and the guest apparently had no intention of starting to speak. "DVODS, I barely said, or rather croaked." The guest immediately rose from his chair and, lifting me up, brought the glass to my lips. I began to greedily drink water without stopping. When it ended, I sighed tiredly, but at the same time with relief. After all, the throat has become normal and there is no feeling of desert in the mouth. Vision gradually returns to normal, and hearing too. But the headache doesn't seem to subside, and it's getting hot. "How do you feel?" the guest asked me. From the voice I realized that it was Alex, my mentor. Looking in his direction, she smiled forcefully at him. "Badly. My head hurts a lot and it's getting hot," I said. "What happened? And why am I in the hospital?" I asked Alex. He stood over me and felt my forehead. Nodding something to himself, he went to the nightstand, poured a glass of water and handed it to me with some kind of pill. "Take it, drink it. It will make you feel better," he said, and I obediently took the pill. Well, what a rare thing. I never liked hospitals, and I couldn't stand medicine. "You lost consciousness during training. You had a high fever." "She lay unconscious for 3 days, with a fever, and the fever did not subside," he said. "The fever will appear from time to time, but it will not be so strong. In theory, you should be discharged in a week or 2 if you improve," he hastened to explain to me. Apparently there was fear in my eyes. Fear that something serious is wrong with me. His face was worried, but there was a soft smile on his lips. I couldn't help myself and smiled back at him, while saying, "Brother." I quickly covered my mouth with my hands, not understanding why I said this. Alex was quite surprised by this, which was evident from his eyes and long face. I was quite surprised myself. I don't know why I suddenly said this, but... "What did you call me?" asked Alex, in whose voice there was a lot of surprise and confusion. Sorry, I don't know why I see called YUS that all of a sudden. B but I F for some reason, T thought that T that's how us older B brothers behave. I have no relatives, I'm an orphan, and I don't know what it's like to have brothers," I said, stuttering and blushing terribly. Sorry, Alex. Nothing. You can call it whatever you like. Besides, I always wanted a little sister. Alex smiled at me, and I blushed even more than before. But, I'm a demon. And I have a tail and ears. Can I call you brother?" I asked. In my eyes, you can probably read bitterness and loneliness, and in my voice you could hear fear and distress. You can, as much as you can. And the tail and ears even suit you and look cute, said Alex. After his words, it was as if a heavy and unbearable weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I smiled at his words, and a sparkle lit up in my eyes. Is it true? I asked. He smiled at this and got up from his place, sat on the edge of the bed and hugged me so that I buried myself in his body. Certainly, he answered and, moving away from me, patted me on the head. I pouted at this, but then I couldn't stand it and laughed merrily. We talked for a long time on various topics, and then the doctor entered the room and escorted Alex out. I passed the test, took the medicine, and when all the procedures were over and the doctor left, I lay down on the pillow and instantly fell asleep. My last thought was that I could trust someone and tell someone about myself what I didn't tell the Hokage. 2 years have passed since I was in the hospital with fever. During this time, a lot happened. And I would like to tell you about this, but I don't know where to start. I think I'll start with the fact that I officially became a NBU. I completed the 6 months that I was allotted for preparation in 2 months. This is thanks to my clones, which I created during training. I have also made good progress in espionage, although I don't take on assignments of this kind. I began to work well in a team, which repeatedly saved the lives of me and my teammates. I also made progress in techniques. Improved skills in all disciplines. True, I still haven't made any progress with genjutsu. From the word absolutely. No, of course, I can recognize the illusion and dispel it, but I never learned how to cast them. Actually, the illusory clone technique doesn't work for me either. So I gave up on it and began to be content with what I had. In principle, why should I create them if my team has 2 Uchihas and copy, or as it is also called Sharingan Kakashi, so I thought so. I can recognize and remove them well. Well, I digress. Genma and I became pretty good friends. We often talk about different topics. Plus, he helps me with training and gives advice if I don't succeed. Alex truly became a big brother to me. Since then, I only call him brother or Nii-san, and he is happy about it, calling me little sister. He taught me many techniques, and also taught me how to use a katana, and now I wield weapons at a fairly high level. Actually, I use a fan much better than a katana. Besides this, 6 months later, after my illness, I told Alex everything. Contrary to my expectations, he just smiled, patted his head and said, "I'm glad that I have such a wonderful little sister. And I don't care who you are. Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi or the daughter of the 4th. It's not your fault that you became the host of a demon. I think your father wanted you to be seen as the hero who restrained the fox, and he also believed that you could restrain him. And from what you said, the fox isn't that bad. And he's glad that he is on your side and helps in whatever way he can." After these words, I began to admire and respect him more. Kurama isn't far behind me. After all, Alex is the first of the people who does not consider him a monster, and is not afraid of him. Well, more precisely the second one. I was the first, hee. As for Rema, I never found a common language with her. She still hates and despises me. In principle, this is mutual. Every time we meet in the corridors or on the training ground, we start having a verbal altercation. It comes to a fight, but we are pulled away from each other in time. Mostly it's Alex, and when he's on a mission, Shirkuan or Itakuan calms me down. But the fact remains a fact. We can't stand each other. The Hokage somehow found out about this and never gives us joint tasks, which I am immensely grateful to. Otherwise, we would have killed each other on the mission. Yukiri and I became best friends. She constantly takes me shopping, which I can't get out of. Sometimes I still manage to sneak away and hide. And I do this with Shirkuan or Itakuan, sometimes with Kakashi, but very rarely. My teammates laugh, but they help. Yukiri is a very good person and I have fun and funny with her. She can cheer you up, lift you out of depression, and support you in difficult times. This probably hooked me, and I quickly found a common language with her. Although sometimes she is annoying with her activity. As for my team, they turned out to be Dog, Hawk and Raven. Or rather Kakashi, Shisui, and Itachi. At first, they were wary of me, but after a week of working together, I became their friend. We did not see each other during the 2 months that I spent in preparation. Afterwards, when Genma said that I would carry out the task and my team was introduced to me, they reacted sparingly and biasedly. But I still managed to get along with them and we became best friends. Itachi became another big brother to me, and he repeatedly called me little sister. Kakashi and I became best friends. From the very beginning he knew who I was and who my parents were. A month later, Kakashi told me everything. And also told what they were like. I listened and admired my parents. I decided that I would become like them. I will become someone they would be proud of. And I won't let mom and dad's expectations down. But with Shisui. In general, I liked him from the very beginning. Back when I came to the base for the first time. Then, when we first introduced ourselves. But when we started working together and started seeing each other more often, I realized that I didn't just like him as a person. I realized that I loved this Uchiha. Then I didn't know how he felt about me. I thought that I was just a teammate, a friend, a little sister to him. But 6 months later, when they confirmed to the Hokage that I could become an ANBU, he offered to walk with him around Konoha. I agreed without thinking. Flashback. The next mission ended in success. At the moment, we are standing in front of the Hokage and reporting on the completed task. When the report was submitted, the Hokage looked at us and asked us to stand up and take off our masks, which we did. So, the year of probation has come to an end. Itachi, Shisui, Kakashi, what is your opinion about Uzumaki Naruto? Sarutobi said. I got all ready to listen to the verdict. After all, the opinions of my comrades will decide whether I will become a full-fledged ANBU or not. Hokage-sama, I think Naruto can become an ANBU. She is well prepared in all respects. Good teamwork, good mentality. Good at strategy and making plans. More than once she helped us out on missions when there were traps or an ambush. She is not bad at espionage, although she does not take on such missions, but if necessary, she does everything that is required of her. So my word is for Naruto, Shisui said. I blushed at his words, but continued to listen carefully. What do you think, Itachi, Kakashi? Asked the old man, turning his gaze to them. I will support Shisui. So I'm for it, Itachi said briefly. I turned my gaze to Kakashi and held my breath. I'm for it, Kakashi said. I beamed and almost started jumping around the office with joy. But she refrained, realizing that now was not the time or place. Fine. Uzumaki Naruto, from this day you officially become a member of ANBU. Your call sign will be Fox, Sarutobi said, and then added. You can be free. Hi. We said and left the office. Congratulations on joining ANBU, Itachi said and patted me on the head. No. Do they all have a habit of ruffling my head? Like Alex, like Itachi, like Kakashi. Only Shisui does not do this, and I am grateful to him for that. Tired of it. Thank you. I smiled. We had just approached the exit from the residence. Itachi and Kakashi said goodbye to me and each went about their business. Shisui stayed with me. I raised an eyebrow questioningly and looked at the Uchiha. Let's take a walk around Konoha? I want to show you something, he smiled. I nodded confusedly and walked next to the brown-haired man. We were silent the whole way. I thought about my own, and Shisui thought about his. No one dared to break this silence. She did not oppress, did not irritate, but on the contrary, somehow calmed and pacified. While we were walking, Shisui bought me ice cream and some other sweets. During this time, the streets became completely dark. Passers-by began to appear less and less often. There were no children at all. Some shops and stores have already closed, others were just opening, and some didn't even think about closing. I was glad that I was walking with my loved one, that I didn't even pay attention to passers-by who cast sidelong glances at me. 20 minutes later, we climbed the rock with the faces of the Hokage. When I looked at the village, I was greeted with an amazing view. I looked at Konoha with a fascinated gaze. And there was something to admire. The entire village was strewn with bright lights, glowing signs, and bulbs. Konoha seemed to be burning in light. And it's so amazing and beautiful that it's simply impossible to take your eyes off. The first stars had already appeared in the sky, which added sophistication to the picture. Looking at all this beauty, I didn't immediately notice that someone had approached me. That someone turned out to be Shisui. Liked? He asked me, standing next to me and looking at Konoha. Very. I answered immediately. You know, I often come here to look at the beauty of Konoha. After all, it is at this time that the whole beautiful side of the village opens up. Only in these moments do I understand that I am lucky to be born and live in this village. But, I also realized that fate itself led me to you. After all, if I lived in another place, I might never have met you and would never have loved you, he said, and I looked in shock into the guy's black eyes. I heard right? Didn't I dream? Isn't this an illusion? Did Shisui really say he loved me? Why there or why you? I started, but they interrupted me without allowing me to finish. Yes. I love you, Naruto Uzumaki, said the brown-haired man. I couldn't believe my ears. So my love is mutual? I love you too, Shisui Uchiha, I said and smiled happily. He hugged me and lightly touched my lips with his lips. End flashback. From that moment, we started dating. And now we have been together for a year and a half. I'm 8 at the moment, but I look 11. My hair has grown and now reaches my hips. I tie them in a high ponytail, sometimes in a braid. My stripes on my cheeks have not gone away, nor have my ears and tail. The figure became like that of 11-year-old girls. Clothing is the usual standard ANBU uniform. Also added to it was a fan and a katana, which I took out of the scroll a long time ago. A katana is attached to the belt on the right side, and a fan is behind the back. My father's kunai are kept in a separate pouch, and some are stamped on his wrists. Casual clothing consists of a mesh t-shirt, topped with a white t-shirt, red-orange, orange skirt and shinobi sandals with a small platform. In principle, I haven't changed much, would you agree? Everything went as usual. Everything was peaceful and ordinary. Nothing happened. I became a frequent guest in the Uchiha clan. I met Itachi's younger brother, whose name is Sasuke. He is my age, but he is so cute that when I meet him, I want to squeeze him. Whenever I have a free minute, I train with him. Itakuan and Shirkuan often join us. Also during this time, Itachi began to call me Naruto Hime. No matter how I tried to persuade him not to call me that, it did not have any effect on him. That's what he called me, and continues to call me. Alex also joined us in training, along with Kakashi. Sasuke became very friendly with me. He follows the example of his older brother and addresses himself as Naruto Hime, and even as you. I feel like some kind of old woman, and not his age. I didn't know then that the quiet days were over. I didn't know what was soon to happen. I didn't know that I would lose the people dearest to me. I didn't know that I would have to go on a trip. I didn't know how those events would affect me. I didn't know that a storm was coming, and I would find myself in the center of this storm, like the person who was dear to me. I didn't know all this, but I had a bad feeling about something inevitable and terrible. But there is exactly a year left before those fateful and terrible events. Exactly 1 year when I lose everything. Until that time, I enjoyed the life and company of the people dearest to me. To the society of my beloved and the society of my named brothers. There is a year of quiet life left. Shisui's POV. My name is Uchiha Shisui. Unremarkable appearance. Black eyes, brown hair sticking out like a hedgehog. You can often see a smile on my face and a sparkle of excitement in my eyes, which is not typical for members of the Uchiha clan. For the clan, I am a genius, just like Uchiha Itachi, the son of the head of the clan.